So hopefully people like our new setup. Well, first of all, hello.
Yeah. Good morning, good
morning,
afternoon,
everyone.
good evening.
Yeah. We were just commenting on our new setup. As we transition to warmer weather, we felt that a fireplace may not be as appropriate. So we went with houseplants. Yeah, and we had a name for one of them. I've forgotten them already.
I forgot too. We should put some labels on there.
Yeah, we'll get better about that.
The two other ones that, well, we have a few of them around the house and the studio and such. And the ones in the kitchen are named after one of our favorite Hayao Miyazaki films.
Yep.
Spirited Away.
Japanese animator, really talented.
So good.
Yeah.
So Haku and Shihiro. Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know if my pronunciation was okay there.
Sounded good to me.
All right. So we're talking today about nonverbal communication, and specifically we're talking about it in the context of greetings and goodbyes. So I'm sure you've noticed that we have our lesson out for this week about should we replace the handshake? You know, there's a lot of chatter about this. It's become a hot topic.
It's controversial, right? I mean, if you think about it, particularly in Western culture and certainly in the US, a handshake is the hallmark of business and demonstrating trust and confidence. I have an uncle who, when he shakes your hand, I don't know if this is for you. I guess he doesn't shake your hand. I guess you guys hug.
You have a few uncles, but...
Yeah. But anyways, when he shakes my hand, he has got a iron
grip. Yeah.
And that's, one of the ways to show your confidence, right? A firm handshake.
Definitely.
So the handshake does serve a lot of purposes.
Definitely.
Right?
And I think it's something that, I'm speaking on behalf of society here, which is, anyway, this is my take.
Always a good thing.
So I'm speaking on behalf of myself, actually. But I think that, until we had to actually consider, no body contact in terms of like saying hello, right? You can't high five.
Wait, are we touching or not?
Yeah, we're touching. Okay. We can't do that, right? If you're practicing social distancing, which you should be, right? We're doing that. So that kind of changes the way we can interact with people and also with the greetings. But I think in light of what's going on right now, the handshake is now this hot topic. Whereas previously, I mean, a couple months ago, no one was thinking about, should we maybe change that social etiquette in Western culture for greeting people?
The idea of getting rid of the handshake, even now, even when we've realized that it is more of a risk than we first appreciated, even now it's still one of these things that feels like an assault on a institution, right? Something that's built into our culture, and for a lot of people, that's upsetting. And it also, I think, is representative of what's going on. Right? So much about our world is changing right now as a result of what's happened that this is just one more reminder that things aren't necessarily going to be the way they used to be.
Yeah, and I think, with more remote work, with more of the distance kind of work relationships, these kinds of things, I think we have to come up with alternatives. It's not to, obliterate the handshake. I mean, I love a good handshake. Yeah. And it's one of the first things you're kind of like taught when you want to, exude executive presence and walk into an interview just like really, confident. You want to have a good handshake. But I think we also have to start considering some other alternatives as well. So that could be, something that's on our radar now for society, at least Western society as a whole, right?
Right, and the way my opinion has changed about this, I used to be, so I'm definitely firmly in the camp of I really like handshakes. And I knew that even before this, there were people who were not as into handshakes for the hygiene reasons. Oh. And I got that, like I understood it, but for me, I was like, you know what, I'm not worried about my immune system. I can handle it. I'm gonna take the risk.
You just wash your hands after.
Well, yeah, but my point is, like, I'm ready to take the risk and do this, and show my confidence in doing so. But what the way my perspective has changed now in light of COVID is that I now realize that it's not just about me, right?
Totally.
It's about the other person. And so, sure, my immune system might be strong. I might have gotten great sleep last night.
Right.
Right.
But it's like,
eating all my vegetables.
Yeah.
But what about the other person? Right. What about the person who maybe their immune system is compromised? Maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep. I may not be sick, but if I just shook hands with someone else who was, and then shook that other person's hand, suddenly, right,
Yeah.
I'm becoming, because of my, frankly, it's my ego, right, saying, oh, I'm tough enough. I'm not afraid of this stuff. I'm therefore putting someone else at risk. That seems wrong to me.
Yeah, I think it's, I agree. I think there's that element of hubris that's like, well, we can all just like this, it's this way and I'm fine. And so if I'm fine, everyone's fine kind of mentality. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we're starting to realize how much we're not only interconnected through the web and the internet, but we're also like, if you go to one single networking event, you will have shaken hands with
by the end of the night.
By
the end of the night,
people, because every person whose hand you shake has already shaken other people's hands.
It's called network effects.
Network effects.
That's how YouTube works.
Right. Come on, YouTube. No,
yeah.
So that's really, it's something to consider. And I think, it's really interesting when we were doing the research for this lesson that we put out earlier this week. I wanted to see sort of other cultures and how they do their greetings. And, in certain cultures where, it's like a religious or mostly like a religious reason, certain cultures, I'm trying to find a way of putting this like.
Well, look, this is easy.
Well, hold on. I got my thought.
Okay.
Certain cultures, men and women do not shake hands. Men and men can shake hands. Women and women can shake hands, but men and women do not shake hands. And so some people adhere to this kind of tradition. Other people don't. Some people find it antiquated. Other people don't. And so sometimes if you put out your hand as a woman, the man... and again, this is like a business setting, a professional setting, will not shake your hand. And you have to sort of, understand that. And that's a cultural difference. Now, that's not to say that the entire culture is this way. Again, it's a type of tradition. So that's one thing. The other thing is with the bowing, right, in Japan. That's so cool, right?
Not just Japan.
Not just Japan.
All of Asia, frankly, has incorporated bows one way or another.
Yeah.
And I always think about this because a lot of the Asian cultures have been around for so long, right? Thousands of years in the case of China and Japan and Korea.
Yeah.
You have to imagine that they've adopted certain techniques as a result of many generations of learning.
Right.
Right? And one of those may have been when you shake someone's hand, that's a potential hygiene risk.
Right.
And so even if they weren't thinking about germs transferring, they knew over time the people who shook people's hands were more likely to get sick and therefore didn't make it to the point of procreation and blah, 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 right? You have the natural evolution.
Yeah.
So, a lot of religious practices and other cultural norms tend to be rooted in concepts or in principles that have to do with our health.
Yeah.
And our ability to thrive as a society.
Yes.
And so that made me wonder if, and this is based on nothing, let's be clear. This is a pure guess.
It's right.
But it made me wonder
positing.
if the reason bowing is so prevalent in Asia is because they, as societies, over time discovered that this was the safer way to greet.
Yeah. I remember when we were on, which train was it? Anyway, it was a very fast train in Japan.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of that?
Well, they call it the bullet train, but there are several trains that go around,
Yeah, it wasn't the maglev. That was
the maglev is in Shanghai.
That was in Shanghai. We did that one too. That was very cool. Anyway, I'm thinking about the one in Japan.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the actual name too.
The hostess, right? What do you really call it? I mean,
sure.
the hostess. Would come around, sometimes with the food cart, sometimes not. And every time she would pass along to the next cart, the train, she would face everyone. So she would turn around, do a 180, face everyone, bow, and then leave.
That was cool.
The whole and people are not even, they're not even like watching her do this. Some are reading their newspapers, some are looking out the window. So they're not even, recognizing it, but they know that she's doing it. So if she doesn't do it, then that's something's amiss. And so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
It was like a goodbye, a greeting. I can't remember if she did it for a greeting, but definitely exiting the train.
Yeah. The bowing is definitely integrated into a lot of parts of the culture. Yeah. I'm trying to think in Western culture and in the U.S., we still have not nonverbal. Yeah, they are nonverbal.
Yeah.
But my point is contactless ways of greeting people, right? You can wave.
Waving.
You can hold your arms open.
I think that's specific to
right?
you.
Hey.
Yeah, that's like a you thing.
Yeah.
It's
specific, but everyone has. No, I mean my friends do it too.
No, I know.
And I'm sure there's some viewers out there who do the same thing. But it's
why
like,
not come up with your own way, right?
Well, that's what I think we wanted to convey in this video is it's not that we're saying you shouldn't handshake.
Yeah.
It's that this is now a time to think about how we do things, and if there's not a better way to do things, or at least alternatives when you're interacting with people who
might be at risk.
Right?
Yeah. Or some people don't want to shake people's hands.
Or that's what my point,
and you
right?
can sense their kind of like hesitation, people. Right? And it's not, we have to start thinking about it as it's not a rude thing. Like we can't take offense and scoff at them and, chide them for not wanting to shake our hand. Because again, like if it's a religious reason, you have to respect that, right? And that is what we need to show other humans. Yeah.
And actually, you're saying you have to respect that. I would say you don't have to, but you should, right?
Yeah.
You should. You don't have to because no one's forcing you to.
Right.
But the benefit of respecting it is that you get their respect in return.
Yeah.
Right? The more consideration that we can show each other, the more patience and tolerance we have for each other, the better off your interactions are going to be. So no one's forcing you to do any of this.
Right.
No one's forcing you to shake someone's hand. And
by royal decree.
By royal decree, right? And you wouldn't want to force anyone to shake your hand if they don't want to. The point is, we have many different ways of doing things, and the more global your interactions become, the more you realize that. And so by being patient and tolerant and accepting of how other people do things, it becomes a much more fluid and pleasant experience.
And then the rest of the communication will be very positive and more tolerant and open-minded.
Yeah, you'll get more done. You'll get more business done. You will make more friends.
For sure.
And you'll learn more, right? It's interesting. We were talking about how communication, so much of it is nonverbal, right? And that's of course the theme of this talk today. And when you think about that, you appreciate just how much you can signal and convey by showing this type of respect.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
By not shaking someone's hand because they didn't stick their hand out. You immediately communicate to them, it looks like you're not someone who shakes hands, which I'm completely okay with. Let's continue the conversation. And they, in turn, interpret that as, wow, this is someone who understands who I am, who respects where I come from. I want to do business with this person.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just a point that you touched upon, so much of our communication is rooted in the nonverbal aspects, our facial expressions, micro expressions, our body language, that kind of thing. It's Professor Albert Mehrabian who, in his studies, found out, in the research that he was conducting, he found out that 93% of our interactions are formed through, the meaning that we convey are formed through 55% body language, 38% tonality, tone of voice, and then just 7% on words. So
it's just wild.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, some people, when they're in discussions with people and talking, they might say it's not what you said, it's how you said it, right? And that really holds true for the rule that he came up with, this what he discovered,
Yes.
Professor Meribian.
And you remind me all the time.
73855, yeah, because your argument might be valid, right? There might be a lot of substance and logic in there. But if the tone is off, if the body language is maybe aggressive or not assertive enough, then was that really an effective way of conveying meaning, right? Because with communication, we're conveying meaning. So that's also, something in terms of body language, in terms of, not body language, in terms of greetings and goodbyes.
Right.
Right? If you do a limpy kind of wave at someone, they might not want to talk to you.
Or
maybe.
like a half smile, right? Something very minor, yeah.
Yeah. So
it says a lot about the way you feel about the person, even if you're not intending to. Maybe you were busy or distracted, but the way someone interprets it can be much richer than you intended to convey.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that, right?
Yeah.
That we're programmed to interpret everything around us, and in particular, we're programmed to really interpret the way other people behave in a very nuanced way. That's another survival mechanism that we've had from day one, right? To identify threats and to identify who we can trust. So even if you don't intend to convey much in your body language, a huge amount is still being communicated.
Yeah.
And even, let's just say you're busy, right? So you didn't give them the proper greeting, you sort of swept by them. That alone says that you didn't have time for them, right? And so they interpret it that way. So this isn't that you should go around being paranoid about how everyone's interpreting you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is us encouraging you to think strategically and to be thoughtful about how your actions impact how other people perceive your actions.
Definitely. And this can be tricky when you're in cross-cultural environments. Let's say, with all things cross-cultural, there's a learning curve, right? And so you might wave to someone, and waving in that culture might not be the way you say hello. That might be like, let's talk outside kind of thing. Right?
Or the danger over here,
right.
danger.
Oh, right, like that.
Yeah.
So you might not know that going into that culture, but keeping this open mind and this curiosity for quenching the desire to learn, right, can be very powerful in adopting new sort of customs and traditions and nonverbal communication as well. Why not?
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point, which is you're also not expected to know all of this stuff, right? It's not like there's a handbook out there that says, oh, this is what they do here and here.
A nonverbal handbook.
Yeah, even within the U.S., right? Different parts of the U.S. Interact in different ways, and different subsets of cultures, even within cities, have different behaviors. So it's way too nuanced and complex for anyone to memorize. So that is why it's so important to be aware, right? So if you wave and the person starts running the opposite direction, it's fair to assume that this didn't mean what you meant it to mean, right? So being smart about it's obviously not going to be that obvious, but being smart about sort of watching how people respond. This is really important when you're going to somewhere where you're not as familiar. You don't necessarily have to know everything, but you want to go in with a heightened sense of awareness, just so that you can start to pick up on the signals that other people are giving in response to how you're behaving.
Exactly. Keep the antenna up in those situations. Now, the other funny thing that I wanted to mention was that, there's a lot of chatter on the internet about should we shake hands? Should we not shake hands? Should we invent something new? And there are people who are talking about, they're just like memes on social media and even articles like in newspapers about this, how maybe we should do here, you want to demonstrate an elbow bump? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Say
like
hello,
this?
I guess. Yeah, like that. Or foot bump,
Foot bump would be really interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean.
Well, I mean, we all know how dogs greet each other, right? Like these things sound silly, but the truth is, nature has developed many different ways for greeting. So, frankly, anything's on the table.
Yeah. You have to make sure, like, there's an unwritten social contract that everyone has to sign off on. That's it. You have to agree.
Yeah. These things only work if enough people agree to do them. So if your style of greeting is like touching the other person's toe with your toe, you got to make sure that they're on the same page, right? Because otherwise...
They're going to be like, what is going on?
You might not achieve what you hoping to achieve.
Yeah. That reminds me. So in college, there are different honor societies, right? And so one of the ones that I was in was Phi Beta Kappa. And there was this really weird handshake that we would do. It was like this. You had to kind of do, like, what is that? Who does that?
It's like the Star Trek.
Yeah, the Star Trek, and you'd basically go like that. And
right?
It was very complicated. And so we had to do this, and we'd get like our certificate, and we'd go like shake hands, except we would do that weird handshake. And then I never used it again after that.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
it has to be practical, right? If you can't figure out like, the mechanism. Then you know.
The other thing I was going to say is, if you are in a situation where you know handshakes are expected, but you don't feel comfortable doing it, then it's good to be upfront about it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be awkward about it and just stand like this.
Right.
You can just say, I'm actually no longer doing handshakes. Please don't be offended. Right.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure to meet you.
I always, if I have like a cold or, I clearly have like a tissue in my hand and someone's trying to greet me, I'll say, I have a cold or something. I always find it jarring when people they're visibly, like sneezing and coughing and they have a tissue in their hand and then they'll still reach out their hand.
Well, it just shows you how much social pressure there is to do it.
I'm just like,
they know that it's, put at risk, but the stigma against not shaking someone's hand is so great that you do it anyways.
Right.
And I think if anything, this is now the time to have the courage to say, that's actually, I was thinking one way I might do it. Is just to say, I didn't get that much sleep last night, and so I want to make sure I'm playing it safe. Or like I have a big trip coming up, I want to make sure I'm playing it safe, not shaking hands right now, but it really is nice to meet you. Right?
Okay.
Something along those lines. Yeah. It's still, look, I'm not saying this is perfect because, again, I'm a handshaker, and when I was not able to shake someone's hand, or when someone's not willing to shake my hand, it's very hard to shake that feeling like there's something I can't trust about that person.
Oh, yeah,
it's really hard to shake that. And even now, I still have a little bit of that in the back of my head, and that just takes time.
Yeah.
And use the rest of the conversation to demonstrate
your
that you are authentic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finishing each other's sentences.
I know. What's new?
So it's interesting. I'm curious to hear from you all. I mean, do you feel like there are alternatives that you would actually use when greeting and saying goodbye? We don't do a handshake to really say goodbye. Well, no, that's not true. In a professional context, you would. You would.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can think of in terms of the way you would greet or say goodbye to someone, and in different contexts, the casual, the more professional context? I'm curious to hear from the Explearning community.
What's nice about the bow, and I'm glad you went with that one for the video, is that it's also a sign of being humble, right? The bow is basically
the head nod.
The head nod.
Yeah,
right. Well, it's a head nod, but it is a mini bow. That's what I was getting at. So it's a head nod, but it is a mini bow, and it's a sign of respect, right?
Yeah.
And I think in Western cultures, we're very afraid of implying that the person we're speaking to is of higher stature than us. In the U.S., it's all about we're all the same. We're all egalitarian.
You address your boss with their first name, as professors by their first name.
Right. And that's one way to do it. But I think what you find in Asian cultures is that people, they're eager for the opportunity to imply that the person they're interacting with is above them.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that doesn't mean that they're better than them. but it's just it's a sign of showing respect.
Yeah. Because that's integrated in the culture. Like they have that with the honorifics, the verbal ones and the nonverbal. Because there's a certain degree, I don't know it, but I think the more senior, the more of a degree you have to bow. So maybe not 90 degrees, maybe 45.
Yeah, the depth and duration is adjusted.
Yeah. So if you're equal in status, like if you're both, boss of a company, let's just go with that, then you maybe go like that instead of go like that, right? You kind of get it 45 degrees.
Right.
Something like that.
And that's the situation I'm getting at. Not so much in situations where there is a massive difference.
Yeah.
I'm getting at the situations even when you're just complete equals. Or not even. Let's just say you're more senior to the person. It still shouldn't feel uncomfortable or embarrassing to show the person that's, technically below you respect.
Yeah.
Deserving of something higher than that, right?
Of course.
So, yeah, it's just all these concepts are in play when you get to greetings and managing these types of interactions. And this added layer of body contact in the context of the greeting, it really does, it complicates things. And so it takes a lot of thought and agreement as a society in order to come up with something that works. And look, maybe we stick with the handshake, but at the very least, going forward, I think we would have a little more awareness of what it means to the other person, and in situations where it might be problematic, alternatives are appropriate.
Definitely, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with voicing that. Like you said, if you are uncomfortable saying hello in a certain way, then express that and be honest about it and humble about it and authentic. And I think you'll be fine. One thing that I didn't mention in the actual lesson about our suggestion as an alternative, one of the many, I'm sure. So the head nod, right? We come up with two in terms of direction. So if you go up, if you nod this way, it's a casual setting. It's like, hey, what's up, right? And if it's
that must be an MD thing. I don't think that must be an MD thing.
I don't know. I just associate you with doing this.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Anyway, and then when you nod downwards, it's more like, hello, good evening, right? It's more of
Reginald.
that. Yeah, exactly. Leopold.
Yeah,
that's a fun name. So in Turkish culture, because I spent time there with the Fulbright and teaching and doing different stuff, to say no, you actually do this.
Right.
And you discovered that when we visited.
Very confusing.
Yeah. And you can also pair that with or you can, just your eyes, if you don't want to do the whole head nod, you can do it with your eyes a little bit. So, right? So we're proposing one thing, but that's specific to maybe Western culture, because in another culture that, nonverbal gesture is already associated with something else. No.
Right. So, yeah, I think the takeaway from that is if you do come up with something new, just be aware that it may have been claimed.
In different cultures, it might mean something else. Right.
Right.
So it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just no.
No. Yeah. And if you get confused looks when you're traveling, then
you'll know why.
You can, ask why.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. In these cross-cultural settings, if you're unfamiliar with something or if you're not sure, ask someone and you'll get their honest feedback. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of nonverbals and, touching upon the greetings and the goodbyes. But again, I'm really curious to hear from the Explearning community about your thoughts on, these alternatives.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we'll keep putting our heads together about this.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
I think that's it for today.
Yeah. Check out the video if you haven't already about should we replace handshakes?
Yeah. Very controversial.
I didn't really think of it that way.
I did. But I'm glad we put it out. It's again, we need to have these conversations. So anyways, thanks for joining us, guys.
Happy Explearning.
Happy Explearning, and we'll catch you
next
on
week.
our next show. Yeah.